Self-Love is the New Sexy, the podcast devoted to helping you overcome life's most painful and stubborn challenges so you can feel great, have more energy, and live stress-free every day. To reach your full potential, simply work with the powerful spiritual principles that are readily accessible to everyone. It's easier than you think, and on today's show, W. Mark Watts is going to show you how starting with self-love is the key to joyously and harmoniously making that happen.
Hey everybody, this is W. Mark Watts. Welcome and thank you for hanging out with me for another episode of Self-Love is the New Sexy. And today's podcast, we're going to talk about the basics of getting unstuck. The basics of getting yourself unstuck. Now, I know for a fact, because I speak with several of you throughout the weeks and days in between podcast episodes, that many of you come across my podcast because you're looking for some motivation or some thoughts or, maybe something that could help you get beyond the current situation that you're in. And many of us find ourselves stuck in this thing called life. And I'm raising my hand over here because I know there's numerous times in my life that I've been stuck and I still get stuck. And so I wanted to speak on it a little bit tonight just because one of my mentors was talking about a little bit in one of his email broadcasts. And then I happened to be working on some projects and I noticed that I was getting stuck in my thought process. Like the ideas weren't flowing. And so then I started to just kind of veer off into thoughts about myself. And it led me down the road to actually thinking about some of the times when I've been stuck and just what did I do in order to move beyond those things and continue to grow, continue to on with the mission, right? So when we're stuck, number one reason why we get stuck is because we are not accepting ourselves. And so I'm going to spend just a few minutes tonight speaking about self-acceptance. Self-acceptance is so huge because when we are not accepting ourselves, we can get bogged down, we can get discouraged, we can get confused, we can get upset. We can very easily get diverted from the very things that we're trying to accomplish. Now, let me give you some examples of times in my life when I know that I've been challenged to overcome, accepting myself. There's been numerous different times and different occasions and in different aspects of my life. Number one is athletically. I've been a basketball player all my life. I started playing ball when I was 8 years old, fell in love with it immediately. And, it became my passion, right? And as I started to grow, you recognize there's some guys that are shorter and some that are taller and bigger and stronger, et cetera, et cetera. And I realized that I was never going to be one of those tall guys. And it's almost inevitable that the shorter guys always want to be taller. The taller guys want to be faster, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I realized that over time, as I continued to grow into my body, I always wanted to be a little bit taller than I actually was. And I don't know really why. I think it's because I felt like I would be able to do a little bit more on the court or maybe be a little more exciting or spectacular or whatever the case might be. So when I was always wanting to be a little taller than I actually was, that's not fully accepting myself. And so if I spend a lot of time thinking about that, then it's going to prohibit my progress in other areas of my game on the court, right? Luckily that wasn't a big deal for me because you have to get used to what is really quickly. So, I was able to separate that, even though it was kind of a little wish list that always stayed in the back of my mind. I was able to move away from it and develop other parts of my game. So let's move into another example that might hit home for more of you listening would be parenting. When you're a parent, especially a first-time parent or someone like me who only has one kid, it was always my goal to do the very best that I could by my son, be the very best parent that I could be. However, I noticed that I was very self-conscious about it at times, especially when he became a teenager and it became a little bit more difficult to parent because there's a lot more decisions that need to be made, and they're growing and having their own ideas and thoughts and wants and desires, and you've got your thoughts and wants and desires, and many times they don't necessarily meet. And how do you manage those types of things? And and so I was starting to wonder, if I was a bad parent, if I wasn't doing a good enough job, if I wasn't, being a good listener, if I didn't understand things. And so ultimately I had to agree with myself that, hey, listen, you are not going to be perfect. This is not going to be perfect, regardless of your desires for it to be. You are not going to do everything right. I did numerous things wrong. I made mistakes. And the beauty of it is, and what I invite you to do, is be okay with those things. The sooner you can accept yourself, the sooner you can become freer, and the sooner you can get beyond those hurdles or those blocks that might be keeping you inside that box. My goal was to continue to grow my relationship, grow a good, positive, strong relationship with my son, right? But if I'm not accepting myself, if I'm thinking I'm less than, if I'm thinking that what I'm doing is such a bad job, I'm more focused and I don't have the confidence to continue to make firm, strong decisions, to continue to reach out and connect with my son, to continue to build more bridges with him. So I'm not growing that relationship, which is my ultimate goal, because I'm simply not accepting the mistakes I might have made or the places where I've fallen short. That's just a part of life. That's a part of being human. And so once I realized that and just got over myself and said, hey, it is what it is. I'm doing the very best I can with what I have, and we're going to roll with it. We're going to move forward, and I'm going to focus on learning how to be better. And so that's what I started to do even more. But first, I had to get beyond the fact that I was giving myself such a hard time for things that everybody goes through, and it's inevitable. I was wasting my time when I needed to be focused on building, so being able to accept myself helped me move forward beyond those temporary blocks and start to build that bigger, stronger, greater relationship with my son and allow myself to grow, So that's one thing that it does. And then the other thing is it really frees you up. It relaxes you. That's the better word. It relaxes you when you can accept who you are, because we put so much pressure on ourselves because we think we should, number one, we should be better, do better, have more, be this place, do whatever. We also think people are paying that much attention to us and that they're that concerned with what we are and what we aren't and what we have and what we don't have. Between those two things, we build up so much tension and stress in our own selves when it doesn't have to be. However, when you start to accept yourself, whether your hair, your weight, your height, the job you have, the home you live in or the apartment you have, the car you have, your family, your kids, when you start to really accept where you are, who you are, in every way, shape, and form, where you're from, whether you have a college education or you don't, it doesn't matter. The bottom line is you are an incredibly wonderful individual, just as you are right now in this moment. And the sooner you come to grips with that and start appreciating that and start honoring that truth, you can start to accept yourself and you can start to ignore, move beyond, block out all the other noise. Some of it's yours and some of it may be coming from other people, so that you can get back to the task at hand, which is whatever your dreams are, whatever you're focused on right now, building that family, getting that new job, starting a new career, focusing on that relationship, whatever it is. But I think it all starts with just really accepting who you are and the things that you do. And it also starts with accepting where you are right now in the moment. There was a time, of course, when I did not do a podcast. I wasn't doing a podcast. However, life situations, when my poor little heart got broken in a million pieces, I was invited to share my story. But I didn't know how to do a podcast. I wasn't thrilled about the idea. As a matter of fact, I've never shared this much about myself as I do now. And so I didn't want to do it, but I felt led to do it. So I had to accept that, hey, I don't know how I'm going to do this or what it's going to sound like or who's going to listen to it. It doesn't matter. I'm going to accept where I am right now, and I'm going to do it anyway. And that freed me up to really start doing podcasts. And now I'm probably 3-4 years into podcasting. And I enjoy doing it. I meet so many great people. I work with so many great clients as a result of my podcast. And so had I never accepted the fact of where I was, I would never be doing the work that I'm doing today. So I hope that gives you some examples. And I hope that you will really take this to heart and look at where you are. Accept where you are, who you are, the mistakes you've made, the things you haven't accomplished yet, where you live, what kind of car you drive, what kind of education you have. It doesn't matter, the color of your skin, your hair. Accept everything, because that's what makes you who you are. That's what makes you beautiful. And when you look at that wholeness and see the things that I see in you, that I feel in you, that I know you to be, you can accept yourself. You can move beyond these areas where you're stuck and get on to the goodness that you're meant to be a part of and to have. All right, I'm going to end right there. It's a pleasure speaking with you folks as always. Look forward to speaking with you all again soon. Start accepting yourself right where you are, 100% of who you are right now. Talk to you soon. Bye now.
You've been listening to Self-Love is the New Sexy with W. Mark Watts. If you enjoyed today's show, be sure to tell a friend. Also, make sure you never miss an episode by subscribing to our show on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, or wherever you listen to podcasts.